Hi everyone, and Happy New Year, and welcome to a brand new season of Head On. 2017 promises to be a very lucky year, and we're here to ask the question tonight, what is in the stars for 2017? And here as our guest this evening is Tony Puerzer from the Nanaimo Astronomy Society. Not astrology, that's a different show. We're here to find out what's in the stars above. So welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Liz.
And
I look forward to it.
to you.
Thank you very much.
Very good. So tell us a little bit about the Nanaimo Astronomy Society, Tony.
Okay.
How long has it been here, and just what are your goals and membership?
Okay. Yeah, it's been around for about 10 years, as far as I know. I wasn't involved in it back then, but I've been a member about 3 or 4 years now with the society. At the moment, we have about 50 members.
Nice.
And one of the key things we do is have monthly meetings. And I think we actually have a picture of one of the meetings here that we might be able to bring up. We have them at the Bevan Park Social Complex. And we have those usually on the last Thursday of the month. So this month in January, we're going to have it on the 26th of January. And we're having a guest from the NRC Hertzberg who is going to talk about what astronomers do with all of the data that they collect. If you can imagine, you know, we have a digital camera, we get a lot of photos and it fills up hard drives. They're constantly collecting data, and so it's how they deal with that big data.
So that's your first guest speaker of the year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For and the
January.
meetings run 7 to 9 p.m.
Right.
or so?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. 7 to 9 at Bevan. Members obviously attend for free, and if a member of the public wants to come and try it out, they get one meeting for free that they can join us with.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. And I think we have a few other pictures to show of the Nanaimo Astronomy Society. There we go, one of your field trips.
So this was out at the G.R. Payne Horticultural Center. We have a little observatory out there that we kind of share the land with VIU for that, and they also have a telescope in there as well. In this particular case, we had all about telescopes night, because there's a lot of people in the general public that purchase a telescope or they have one kicking around the attic, and they really are curious about how do you use them or what are the different types of telescopes that exist. So we had an evening out there, we had a bit of a potluck dinner, and then we just had a whole bunch of different telescopes. This is the largest telescope that we currently have. It's a 20-inch, it's called a Dobsonian Telescope. So the mirror at the bottom in that white box at the bottom is 20 inches across. So it's a huge, huge telescope. It was built by one of our club members, Bill Weller, and the club actually ground the mirror and everything. So it was built completely from scratch, the telescope, and it's fantastic for taking a look at things like the moon. And there's actually a picture, I think if we do the next picture, there's a shot of the moon. A lot of people want to look at the moon at a full moon. I mean, that's the most romantic time to be out there looking at the moon. But you don't get a lot of contrast in the craters and things like that. It's almost like looking at it face on, and the lighting is quite flat.
Right.
So a good time is at what they call first quarter, or here we see the moon just a little beyond first quarter, and you see these beautiful craters along the edge. And that's always a crowd pleaser for people, especially in a big telescope. The next image is one that you would only see in a little bit larger telescope. This is called the Great Globular Cluster M13. It's in the constellation of Hercules. And again, this is another thing in a medium to large size telescope that's just absolutely beautiful. There's about 500,000 stars in that cluster of stars, and that's just about the way it looks in a telescope to the eye.
You wouldn't be able to see that with a really good pair of binoculars, would you?
No,
Tony?
it's just a tiny little fuzzy blob in the constellation Hercules. You can see it, I guess, in that sense with binoculars, but you don't see it in that kind of detail at all. No. And then we also do daytime observing as well. I mean, because obviously not everybody wants to, go out in the middle of the night. And this is something we do on Canada Day down at Maffeo Sutton Park. This is one of our club members, Fraser Lee, who's brought his own telescope, and he's fitted it with a very special solar filter that actually allows you to see the sun safely by using a telescope like that, and that's some of the members of the public are having a look. The next picture gives you an idea of what you can see through a telescope like that. This was a particularly big sunspot. That sunspot is actually many times bigger than the Earth itself,
Really?
to give you an idea of the scale. Like, the sun is gigantic, and any of the features that you see on the sun like that, these sunspots, are huge, like
Now,
way bigger
Tony,
than the
do
Earth.
sunspots only occur at certain times of the year, or would you see them?
They go through a cycle that is about 11 or 12 years in length. And so there are maximums for sunspots, and that was one that was near the solar maximum. We're now sort of in the saddle of things where we don't get as many sunspots. You can never 100% predict that you're not going to get a sunspot, but they've sort of, over the course of many years, they found that it does go through this sort of natural cycle.
And do we tend to see more at certain seasons, or?
No, it's just kind of over quite a long period of time, like over a decade kind of thing, that you'll get a higher and lower amount to that. So.
Looks like the sun has a big freckle.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that was a pretty neat sunspot. They're not always quite as big as that.
This is gorgeous.
Yeah, now this is something really interesting, and we have a couple of telescopes in the club that are very specialized. They can only be used to look at the sun, and they're really neat because they use just one of the frequencies of light. So if you've ever seen like a really bright red laser pointer or something like that, it's that intense red line. It's called the hydrogen alpha part of the spectrum. So it's light that's emitted by the hydrogen atoms in the sun's atmosphere, and it blocks out all of the daylight. So you can actually you're seeing those prominences on the edge of the sun there. You can see these giant prominences that are leaping off the edge of the sun, and it changes. These things change over minutes or hours. So we've actually had people that'll be looking and saying, oh, I see something happening here. So they're seeing this sort of churning, boiling sun through these special solar filters called hydrogen alpha filters. So that's a neat thing to be able to look at.
Oh.
Okay, and so we have some glasses here that are similar to what the people are wearing there. That was an outreach event that was back in, when was that? That was October of 2014, and there was a partial eclipse of the sun. So the next photo shows what everybody was looking at with those glasses, and the moon, I can sort of simulate that with my little fake moon here.
Demo.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine that you are the sun and I'm the Earth,
All right.
and you may need your glasses, where I probably would if I'm looking at you as the sun. And the moon is going around the Earth once a month, ish, about 29 days it takes to go around. And sometimes it's a little higher on the ecliptic, sometimes a little bit lower, but there are times when it will completely go in front of the sun as viewed from certain locations. And that was one of them back in October of 2014. We were a little bit off the path of totality there for the sun. It was, I think that you could see a total eclipse, but it was way high up in the Arctic or something. So we were a little further south, and we were kind of looking almost under the moon there. And it blocked the light from the sun, but it was a fairly dramatic thing to see.
And that was a perspective from here in Nanaimo?
From here in Nanaimo, yeah. That one we also set up at Mafeo Sutton. This one was a huge event for us. This is down at Departure Bay, and this was in September 27th, 2015. There was an eclipse of the moon, a total eclipse of the moon, and it also coincided with, it's this term that's become popular recently for a supermoon.
Yes.
So it's when the moon is a little closer to the Earth than normal. So we had this double effect where we had the moon being close to the Earth, and we had a lunar eclipse, which is the opposite thing. So there, it's, if I'm the Earth, I'm getting in the way of the light, if you're the sun, of the moon. And so the moon is blocked out. So in the next picture, you can see the way it looked, and you have this very reddish glow, which is just, it's actually kind of neat. When you have a total eclipse of the moon, believe it or not, that red light that you're seeing on the surface of the moon, and this is just as the moon was coming out of eclipse, so there's a little bit of white light of sunlight on it, but the red is actually every sunset and sunrise that's taking place on the Earth at that moment in time. So it's that red filtered light. Isn't that amazing? And you're seeing that then on the moon. And if you look carefully at the photograph, you can actually see some stars around it as well. So even though normally at a full moon, it would wash out all of the stars, but here it gets dark enough that, that you can actually see the stars around the moon. So those were some of our public outreach events. Here we do a lot of things for the schools as well, and so this was a very chilly evening at Rock City Elementary School, and we set up a couple of telescopes. You can see they're a lot lower than normal because we had a lot of young children that made it out after dinner, and we were, at that time, we were actually looking at the full moon, and I was impressed that the kids toughed it out as long as they did in the cold weather, but they were pretty excited to be able to look through a telescope for real.
Very nice.
And then our other big initiative is that we would like, as a medium to long-term goal, to actually establish a permanent urban star park. And so the idea here is that there would be some sort of protected area in the city of Nanaimo, or perhaps the Nanaimo Regional District, where people could go any evening of the year and just enjoy the night sky.
The light pollution.
Right, and so the idea would be that it would have to have sort of street lights would be suppressed or covered. There would be minimal lighting, you know, maybe on the ground or something like that. And so we've been talking with the Parks Board and the city, trying to see if there's a spot. Now, obviously the city is concerned if you have a park that's open 24/7, you know, is there going to be vandalism, or are people going to be there drinking or something like that? So it's always an issue.
Burglars and astronomers both come out after dark.
That's right. That's right. But there is, it has been done in a couple of places in Canada. The closest one actually is down at Kettle Point in Victoria. So they somehow figured out a way to make it happen. And the idea is not that it's the most pristine dark sky available. I mean, there are preserves for that on Earth, but just that it's something that's accessible to the public. So that's kind of one of our, like I said, one of our medium-term goals is to try and make that happen. And
the society, the Astronomy Society, your group is behind the driving force behind that. Awesome.
Exactly. And there's an official designation through the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, which is an actual designation, a USP, an urban star park, and they have certain rules about the lighting and testing and that.
You know, the skies that we're seeing, those aren't our ancestors or even grandparents' skies. Like with all the light pollution, we're just not being able to see as much of the amazing beauty up there that is out there.
Right. I mean, we're lucky in Nanaimo that it's not as bad as if we lived in LA or New York or even Vancouver, but it's a resource that is at risk of being lost, you know, and I'm sure you know, even in our lifetime, there's just more and more lights, and you see less and less. There was a time, you're right, I mean, when, you know, my mother or grandmother would have seen the Milky Way all the time from their backyard, and exactly. I have a picture here. This is my tent up on a mountain called Mount Kobau, which is just outside of Osoyoos, BC. And the mountain was originally supposed to be a Canadian observatory. This is going, I can't even remember, going way back. They had, like in the 1980s or something, they had the idea of building a large telescope there. They decided against it, and they ended up putting the money into the telescope in Hawaii on the big island on Mauna Kea. But it is still probably one of the best spots in Canada. So if there was somebody wanting to, you know, have a look at what the night sky really can look like at a really pristine dark location, then the top of Mount Kobau, just outside of Osoyoos, is a pretty good bet.
That's fantastic. I never knew that. And in the background, are we looking at the Milky Way there?
Yeah, you're actually seeing the summer Milky Way. It looks like steam coming out of my tent there, but honestly, you can see it just like that with your eye. So this photo, like a lot of times photos show a little more than, you know, what you would see with your eye, but it really does look like that.
That's beautiful.
And it's just fantastic.
Nicely shot.
Yeah.
I might add too that Tony's a professional photographer, so these images that we're seeing tonight are shot by him. So we really appreciate you sharing your art with us.
Okay, thank you.
And also, Tony, you brought an exquisite video that we're going to show now.
This video was shot at another star party location in Merritt, BC. And once a year they have the Merritt Star Party up there. And so again, I would recommend people check that out as well. It's usually at a new moon in and around the latter part of August or in the middle of August. And this video is a 3.5 hour time lapse that I shot that compresses the 3.5 hours into about 39 seconds. And you can actually see how the sky appears to move. There were some clouds passing through. And then you also get that beautiful Milky Way coming up through the scene there as well. And the lens ended up fogging over a little bit near dawn, but it was a very pretty thing. What I love about that
is we forget that we're the ones moving, not the stars. So with that time lapse, you really get the sense that, you know, we're really hurtling through space here, although we're not aware of it all the time, but you see something like that.
No, exactly. I mean, I almost have to catch myself all the time because I'll just naturally talk about the sun rising or the moon rising or the moon, you know, the stars moving, and you're right, it isn't. It's all us.
Yes, exactly.
The Earth is turning, that's doing all of that.
Exactly. And like the meteors being shot
across. Oh yeah, sort
that.
of zipping by there as well, yeah, and then the occasional little car light
going by. So that was a 3.5 hour lapse?
3.5 hour time lapse,
so we would have seen the International Space Station come through there a few times too.
Yes, yes indeed.
Because that's what, 16 times a day or so?
Yeah, I think something about like that, yeah. And it sort of progresses along, you know, over different areas of the Earth. There's some neat online applications that you can do that'll predict whether it's going to come over or not. It's kind of fun to watch. Watch it come over Nanaimo, so it's kind of a
Right now, as we speak, there's 6 astronauts in the sky. You know, up in that space station, which is about 4 NHL rinks long and 1 wide. Huge,
huge thing.
Yeah, and we sort of forget about it, you know.
I know, there's people living up in space on a permanent basis.
And on that space station, we had about 12 Canadians aboard that. Some of the more famous ones are Patricia Bondar and Julie Payette, and of course Chris Hadfield.
Yeah, who could forget him?
We don't have anybody aboard right now, but probably will be soon.
Yep.
So
yeah, no, it's the Canadian Space Agency does play a pretty vital role in what goes on up there with the Canadarm and things like that.
Yeah, Canadarm. So Tony, what can we look forward to?
Okay, yes. So we've been talking a lot about what's happened in the past. I want to start with something that anybody can see without even a telescope or any preparation.
Wow.
And I have a photo here of a beautiful sunset in the middle of the summer, around the middle of June, and it's setting over the Winchelsea Islands. Wow. And this was taken from just the northern part of Nanaimo, just up above Hammond Bay Road. And what's neat about this is that there's a very short window of time, maybe 2.5 months in Nanaimo, where you get the sun setting over the water in that area. And the reason I brought this up is that it's something people can watch for, because we've been talking about the Earth turning on its axis, which causes the sun and moon to appear to rise and the stars. But you have to remember, we're also going around the sun every year.
Right.
And the Earth has a tilt, which we all learned about in school, in elementary school, of 23.5 degrees. And as we go around, there are times when we're tilted away from the sun, which is in the northern hemisphere is winter for us, and then times when the axis is tilted towards the sun.
Yeah.
And as we go around, and with that tilting, it will change where the sun appears to rise and set over the year. So in the summertime, for us, it sets very far north of west, and then you get that beautiful stuff with the Winchelsea Islands there. And the same thing is true with the moon. And this is a picture I took from my front deck, actually, of the moon setting, or rising rather, a full moon rising over Mount Baker. I wasn't even prepared for this to happen. I just ran in and got my camera and took a shot. Originally, I was looking out at Mount Baker and thinking, what a beautiful, nice sunset on Mount Baker. Yeah. And then I saw this bubble appear, and I thought Mount Baker was blowing up. I thought, oh my gosh, it's a volcano or something like that, but it turns out it was the full moon rising behind it, which was kind of neat.
What time of year is this one?
Now, this was in the summertime, but it was interesting. When I was coming over to the studio this evening, I noticed the full moon, almost full, not quite, it's a couple of days away, but it was rising way further north, like almost from my house, it was rising over kind of over Bowen Island area.
Yes.
And so the same way that the moon, that the sun moves in where it rises during the year, so does the moon. And so the reason I wanted to bring these two things up is these are things that people can just pay attention to over the course of a year. And I don't know, for me, it just gives me a connection to the universe to be able to say, oh yeah, the moon, is coming up, and then next month it'll be a little further over, or something like that. It's kind of neat just to have that connection with the stars.
Some context here in the universe.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are things that happen every year. Yeah. I mean, we get the sun rising at certain positions at the same time every year, and the moon a little bit less so. But there are things then that come up that are only once are going to happen. And this is going to happen on the 31st of January this year in 2017. And there's going to be what's called a conjunction of the moon, Venus, and the planet Mars. And they're going to make a neat little triangle.
All
and
in one night?
Yeah, what's happening is the moon, because it's moving around the Earth so quickly once a month, it will join these two planets in the evening sky that evening. And so on the 31st, if it's clear, which is 31st of January, if it's clear, have a look in the evening sky. It'll be low down, as you can see here from the horizon, and it'll be just a beautiful sight. And if somebody has a pair of binoculars or a small telescope, you could train them on those objects. So
and what direction should we be looking?
Here, at this time of year, you're going to be looking a little bit a little south of west for the sunset. Yeah, so just after the sun sets, have a look out there, and you'll probably see the moon and Venus first, and then Mars will appear a little bit later because it's a little dimmer. So that's something to look forward to. And there's a number of conjunctions that happen with the planets and the moon over the year. There's another one much later in the year on November 13th, where it'll be in the east at sunrise, and you get Venus and Jupiter in that case will be coming together. So these are things that are worth looking for. But they brought up the picture here. All of these pale in comparison to the big event for 2017. There is a total eclipse of the sun that's visible across the continental United States. And the last time this happened was 38 years ago.
Really?
So this is a big deal event. Seeing a total eclipse of the sun is a life-changing event. It's an amazing thing. And it's definitely worth going to see. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time just giving people a preview of what may happen or what will happen on the 21st of August this year. So if we take up the next slide, you can see there's a path that runs pretty well from the state of Oregon down through South Carolina in the United States.
A swath right across.
A swath right across. And that tinted area there that runs through those various states, just about diagonally through the United States, is the only place where you can see a total eclipse.
Wow.
Now, everything north or south of that, you're going to get a partial eclipse, which looks like the one that we showed quite a while ago, where the moon doesn't quite cover the sun. So you really want to be on that path. The closest for us is in Oregon, and the next slide shows a detail of just the state of Oregon on the next slide, and you can see the exact path. And it's a little south of Portland for the totality. It runs almost directly through Salem, Oregon.
Wow.
And so that would be probably the closest place you could go and see the eclipse.
Tony, would we be able to see much from Vancouver Island? Or would we have to...
No, unfortunately.
So pack your bags,
yeah,
to Portland.
Yeah. I've got we'll hold on that idea just a second. I'll show you what it'll look like from here. But this is what it's going to look like during the total eclipse of the sun.
Wow.
Now, this is at 10 in the morning,
Really?
in August. And you're going to see stars up in the sky.
Love
you
it.
will see the planets. You're going to see the constellation that the sun is in, which is in Leo. So for people that are into astrology, they can actually see their sun sign at that time and actually see the sun right in front of the constellation Leo. And so it'll be about 2 minutes of the total eclipse as seen from Salem at a little bit after 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing that. Now, this picture shows what it'll look like from Nanaimo.
Okay.
So pretty much eclipsed,
Yeah.
but even that thin sliver of the sun is so searingly bright that it will still be totally a blue sky day.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see anything in the way of stars or anything special.
Okay.
So, you know, if you think you can pull it off to be able to travel down to Oregon on the 21st of August, I would recommend
When's
it.
the next one?
Oh, okay, yeah. Now we have. Oh, actually, before we get to that, let me just tell you about what happened to me when I went. I was a young man, 20 years old, working for the Vancouver Planetarium at the time, and we organized a bus trip down to Portland for the eclipse that took place in February 26th, 1979.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So I was leading this bus tour. There were two different buses, and we went down there, and that newspaper article pretty well describes what happened. We were rained out, so it got dark, but I had a whole bunch of really disappointed people on the bus. I thought because I had a meteorologist along with me that we had powers or something. Turns out the other bus, they didn't have a meteorologist, but they drove to another spot and they saw the eclipse, and we didn't.
Maybe they had a priest.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty well what you need. But I've been waiting 38 years for a repeat on that down in Oregon.
Tony, we've got about a minute left.
Oh, okay,
so
sure. Yeah.
I'm sorry to have
Oh,
to
no
rush
problem.
the stars
Okay.
here, but-
Yeah, no, that's fine. The key, I guess, the key thing then is just to say that it won't be until 2024 that you're going to see another eclipse this close. So it's really worth checking it out. And if
Sky
you
News Magazine.
yes, let's bring this up.
Canadian
This is a
magazine.
Canadian magazine on astronomy, and they have some great star charts in the middle for people to have a look. And this particular issue that's on the newsstands right now has a summary of all of the great events that are going to happen in 2017.
Good one
so
to pick up.
Yeah. Excellent one to pick up
And I
at
think
this time
last
of
year,
year.
one of your guest speakers was actually one of the editors of Sky News
Correct.
Magazine.
Yes, a fellow named Ken Hewitt-White, who I've known for years. And I'm now a writer. It was part of the deal to get him to speak. I had to write for the magazine. So I'm doing a series of articles on astrophotography. So if people want to learn how to photograph the stars, they can read my articles in the magazine as well, which is kind of neat.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So skynews.ca,
Right.
NanaimoAstronomy.com,
Right.
for people to come out to the next meeting.
Right.
Remind us the
January
date?
26th, I think.
26th.
Yes, last Thursday of this month.
Bevan
Yeah.
Social Center, 7 to 9,
Right.
to learn more about what's going to be happening in the stars above us and around the world. There's also eclipse chasers who follow eclipses around the planet.
Yeah, it's a great way to plan your vacations. It's like
Exactly.
spinning the dial there and seeing where the next solar eclipse is going to
Exactly.
be. But
Thank you so much, Tony,
Okay.
for giving us this, flavor of what is out there in this fantastic, vast universe that we're all a part of, and for spiking some interest too for others who might, looking for a new hobby or something this year. So thank you so much, and we look forward to having you on again, maybe when you come back from Oregon, and tell us about
Right.
the amazing.
I have some good photos of
Exactly.
that eclipse. Yeah, exactly. Thanks,
Thank you
Liz.
so much.
Okay.
And we hope all things good are in the stars for you this year as well. Thank you for joining us here at Head On. If you have any comments or questions, please contact Annette Lucas and give her your suggestions for upcoming shows as well. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to everybody.